Hello everyone, I just wanted to make a video talking about eventing. I kind of thought that this would be good to have, just to have something to reference to point to, in case people haven't played my own games, which I guess I decided to use an example because, you know, I know how they were made, and I know what was involved in making them, and kind of my thought process and stuff. And I also know that none of the things I did were particularly complicated and used too many plugins, so when I talk about eventing, I'll sometimes talk about like how boring a scene is, and this is kind of what I want to show off as, like, you know, there are things you can do in RPG Maker to kind of liven up the scenes a bit. So this is my old project. This is my old game, the Oni Sellsword, and this is pretty basic. It's like 99% RTP. You can see the main character here has custom art. The sprite is actually just built in the character editor. I might have edited the sprite a little bit, but not very much. But aside from that, the game, there's a few other characters with custom art, but that's all. In terms of eventing, I have a camera mod, and then some text-to-speech, and I have this thing, or not text-to-speech, but a typing sound when characters talk, and the name shows up here. And I think the message box size has changed. I think that's about all the things I do for plugins, all the complicated stuff, but I want to talk about things like business and blocking and kind of little things to do to add more to visual storytelling. This is kind of laughable because the RTP sound is hilarious. I've made fun of it before. This kind of just happens because I didn't have a good opportunity to show off this character's full art, and I just shoved it in here. But that's not part of the lesson. You'll notice in the previous scene, she quickly walked into her tent. Got this little scene where she does that little thing, looks around, and then walks over. So I do this a couple of times in this game, which is that this is just a establishing shot. And so that means this map, you can't like explore it or do anything with it. It's literally just here just to like be connective tissue in the story. And even considering all that, like, I mean, it's obviously only one screen, so it's not super detailed, but I've got some things going on, like these guys over here having a little conversation. I have this little, it's not actually random, I think it's a sequential of people walking in. And so, you know, little things to kind of make things seem like this is a entrance to a major castle here. Not going to talk too much about the dialogue other than it's short. Everything was kind of kept very succinct. You'll notice there's little pauses. I guess that's the other thing I did with the plugin, which is I added little pauses to try to emulate cadence of speech a little bit, you know, when there's commas and periods and such. I don't think anyone ever notices it, but kind of think it makes a difference. It's a little bit more effort to do that. It's kind of unnecessary, though. So if you want to skip, I would say probably skip that, but I don't know, we'll see. So yeah, pretty short scene. Kind of leads into the previous scene where this guy is obviously ignorant. He doesn't know that she's wanted, but she believes she can enter, and, you know, kind of establishing a little bit of relationship. And kind of the point of the scene is that she's just trying to get into the castle and see the king, but kind of establishing a lot of past stuff quickly. Like, I don't have to have the guard have a long conversation about how, I know you and you've done work and this and that. Like, oh, hey, here to see the king again? Like, that's it. We know that they have a previous relationship. Move on. And so here you got another scene. This is another establishing shot, actually. Or just for, I guess it's funny to call it an establishing shot because this is a whole scene. That's not what you'd call it in movies. I call it that in a game because there's no gameplay here. Can't do anything again. So again, very short. I kind of overuse sounds a lot. I guess I kind of figured that was the thing for an anime type JRPG game. I don't know. I actually kind of find it a little annoying, but now looking back on it, but I think this is it's something, like something's happening to tell you what's going on. And again, we've got kind of short. What's she doing here? Like the fact that they're alarmed that she's here. You know, I guess that kind of gets in the writing. Like having characters have opinions about things that are happening is good. You know, have reactions She punches him. He just takes a step backward. Now it's just a play animation. She steps forward. Just sort of business and blocking, having actions happen in the scene. Obviously, we're establishing more things here. Just some quick backstory of like, and some. It's difficult to establish character in such a short game, but the implication, because earlier she gets very angry when she's first accused. The implication being that she's, usually pretty level-headed and cool and makes jokes about things, but she gets very angry when people say things about her friend. So that should be kind of like a clue that maybe something's going on between the two of them. And this is kind of a funny thing. So this is RTP, obviously. If I were to show the princess later on, she's obviously very beautiful, and she looks like she's, young in her 20s or something. This guy looks like he's in his 40s, and he's fat and whatnot. And, this is kind of my take on, like, medieval stuff, is that I guess my thought process on whether to do medieval or sci-fi has, there's settings and there's types of games you can make, right? But in terms of stories, like, what is the point of a story in a given setting? In a sci-fi story, you usually reflect on, current times or where things are going, the morality of certain technology and progress and the human condition, this and that. With medieval stuff, it's a little bit tougher, I'd say, to find something that's more definitive, at least to me. Something that's not as generic. But I do think an interesting thing that I find, I guess my example would be Game of Thrones, is to kind of show like the opposite of sci-fi, where it's like, look at where we came from, like, oh god, I'm glad we don't live in this time period anymore. So, this guy's obviously much older than the princess, and his name is very different. Princess is just Law, and her father is Saw, so you kind of got this implication that he's not from the same kingdom. So he obviously just married into here for, land and power, reasons like that you would do in the old days. And you kind of get more of that as this conversation goes on. It's pretty clear that he doesn't think very highly of Princess Law. Oh, this is a terrible line of dialogue that's terrible and sucks. This is actually a placeholder. I kind of just threw this in here to be like, whatever, you're a jerk. I meant to put like an actual insult in here, and I never did. Thankfully, 5 years later, I have thought of a good comeback, so maybe if I patch the game, I'll put that in there. The comeback is something along the lines of, you couldn't befriend a whore with a full coin purse, which is kind of a double entendre, because coin purse is like, in a euphemism for balls. And so, anyway, point is, he's a dumb idiot who's a jerk, obviously, and she's like, yeah, she doesn't love you, obviously. Stomping, more things, business, movement, visuals, good to have. Character reactions, opinions, the things that are happening. She didn't even say anything, she just made a face, closed her eyes, right? Like, so many times I see the ... used in RPG Maker games, and it's just like, it's like overused and filler and stuff. I kind of hate using it too, to be honest, but I think when it comes to visual storytelling, and since I was going for this kind of anime feeling, I was kind of like, I guess that's fine. Let's use the ... But, she's holding her tongue as she's being kind of insulted. And, you got kind of these, this is writing, again, that I'm kind of going back and forth with, talking about eventing and talking about writing. Like, obviously, this king is trying to be respectful, but his wording is not particularly, it's kind of backhand compliments here. He's still showing that he's not particularly a good guy. A silly little animation to show him picking something up. Throws it to her, and she picks it up. Just more trying to arrange things in a visual way, and not just talk window, right? Like, have these little things to happen that are visual. I know the smell of the ink is made from a pungent flower, my world. Kind of trying to connect the dots here on her and the other Oni, slip in her background and stuff eventually. And we don't need to read this whole letter, right? Like, so I just skipped over it and summarized it. Him doing more where he's just like a jerk, and I think she can't read. Kind of more establishing the kind of world that they live in, that the Oni are second-class citizens or not even citizens at all. Throws the letter aside, jumps forward, sound effect, more visual things. And this is a long pause, but hopefully people are paying attention to see all this little things happening. Him doing the triple take. King, as the king turns to a side to think about stuff. Backstep, exclamation point. And more like drama here where the king is like, I guess showing his hand that he does believe that she's not involved, but still is like, I have to, you know, I don't fully trust you, and I have to make a martyr of someone, or not a martyr, but a example of somebody if this doesn't go well, you know. It's just using the stupid speech bubbles. Like, speech bubbles are like free in RPG Maker. I don't, like, they're not amazing, but they're something. You can use those in place of, you know, not having facial changes for characters. You know, there's some implications there. I'm kind of skipping through the dialogue a little too fast. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure the video is short. So the whole exchange there was kind of leading to this part where this little reveal happens. It's just, I don't know, kind of goofy. I was like, how am I going to do this? Or jump from nowhere. Walking in place, walking around. Oh, more art for no reason. And we have characters walking off. She takes a step forward because she's kind of hurrying and doesn't realize that she's stopped moving. And they continue on. She follows. I guess that's all a show for this one for now. I'll move on to a new scene in Automatic Messiah now. Alright, so just a few little new tricks here. I mean, still the same plugins though. The camera started off zoomed in and zoomed out to have kind of this reveal that things have gone horribly wrong in this mission. I'll say I have mentioned before that I kind of want to redo this map, and this is kind of part of that, which is that I don't know that the reveal really lands at all. I mean, I do have kind of a lot of skulls and bones and stuff, but kind of thinking it needs to be a little more horrific when you first show up to have that, to earn that kind of big shock that just happens right there. But yeah, something. He plays an animation and he spins around and he's like, whoa, where am I? So mostly what I have now in this new game is I have sprite sets to have more available animations, so I try to utilize those. But other than that, I don't have a whole lot of tricks up my sleeve. Just kind of a lot of the same stuff of keeping stuff brisk and doing things visually. So you have these characters walking up to him while he's kind of like having a conversation with himself. The computer's like, use your thoughts to speak to me, don't be an idiot. And this guy comes over, walks around him, checks him out. And I love these idle animations, or not animations, frame. I do actually have animations available, but I need a plugin to actually make them animate. That doesn't work with some of the plugins I'm currently using. And so now we're going to have one of those examples of animations where these guys, he turns around, has a conversation, and they laugh. Little audio. The laughing animation, funny enough, is a take damage animation. It's not a laughing animation, but that was one of the things I talked about in dev chat, where I was like, I hope nobody noticed this jank. Their frames do blink, and that's because the reason that happens is because I'm using different sprite sheets, and whenever you call a different sprite sheet, it causes that little blink to happen. I'm not really sure how to fix that with the plugins I have. A more advanced set of plugins, or someone who can work sprite sheets better in some way. I don't know how, because everything has to have the same number of frames in a sprite sheet for it to want to do that. And some of these are 3-frame animations, some of them 8 frames. So that's why I'm switching sprite sheets. So ideally, if you can, try to use the same sprite sheet. I'm not sure if this happens on an SSD. This computer I'm on is actually just using a regular old hard drive. But I have a feeling, especially if you have a higher frame rate monitor, that you're always going to be able to see that blink. So that kind of sucks, but what are you going to do? So they threw a punch, animation, got these guys to back away while playing a different animation, a different hit animation. And this kind of leads into this easy combat, which is really more about story than any kind of tutorial. I mean, you could call it a tutorial in the sense that, like, it's your first chance to familiarize yourself with these menus and stuff. And you can try this. It just won't work. It does nothing, basically, but I kind of felt I had to have some sort of other button other than murder to hopefully get the player thinking, like, man, I wish I could do something different. So yeah, here we have this little piece of storytelling. They've left scorch marks behind where they've been killed. And get that punch again. He's got this kneeling animation. And he kicks him, and I have this little animation, the blood pooling out of his head. So yeah, having things happen, and you'll notice that there's usually only a few lines of dialogue before something happens. Each line of dialogue is generally pretty short. Try to avoid having gigantic text boxes. I mean, those can happen, obviously, it's unavoidable at times. But by and large, you know, being more succinct, it's good to keep things kind of short, to the point. That's a new thing I'm doing too, I guess, is I have dialogue options. So you can be edgy if you want to be. Sounds like a hard road. Guess I'll have to hit the ground running. Yeah, just being a hard ass. And yeah. But anyway, I was here talking about eventing, and I think that's all I wanted to show for today. The point being, business blocking, pacing, succinctity, right? Have things happen. Have stuff visually happen. Keep things interesting. You know, I feel like I don't see many games where stuff happens in the cutscenes. It's just back and forth, back and forth. This picture, that picture. Next person, that person. Just switching the two portraits back and forth. Huge, long boxes, multiple of them at a time, and they're not really saying a whole lot. So I think that, you know, it's real tempting to front load and put all this information and get the player in, but it's a journey. The player needs to explore things and find stuff out. Not everything needs to be said right away. Alright, so that's going to be it for me. I'll see you guys next time.